For days, we've been the only media outlet in Canada to raise the alarm about Saudi Arabian censorship of Canadian TV stations. If you've been watching, you know the story. A little NGO that I volunteer with called ethicaloil.org produced a low-budget TV ad pointing out that Canadian oil sands oil is superior to Saudi conflict oil because we believe in equality of men and women, and the Saudis don't. We ran that ad on the Oprah Winfrey Network, which apparently is must-see TV over there in Riyadh, because before you know it, that dictatorship hired one of the biggest law firms in the world called Norton Rose to start threatening Canadian TV stations not to run that little ad. CTV, Canada's largest private broadcaster, immediately buckled. They cancelled a signed advertising contract for the ad after receiving the Saudi threat. CTV issued a statement saying the ad was the subject of a legal dispute. But that's actually not true. It's an excuse. The ad has been subject to no lawsuit. The Saudis haven't even particularized their problem with the ad. It's obviously not a legal problem. It's a political problem. It's an embarrassment problem. The Saudis hate political criticism. They hate us for pointing out that they treat women so poorly. CTV is just scared of being sued by a big foreign bully. Now, CTV is a big, rich TV company, but they're just a pipsqueak compared to how rich and big the Saudi princes are with their 2,600-man law firm, Norton Rose. So CTV is actually a victim here, too. They're like a hostage in a hostage-taking. The Saudis are the real problem, and even mighty CTV isn't big enough to defend itself against a foreign dictatorship, which is why we need the Prime Minister to weigh in, to level the playing field, government to government. This is a diplomatic incident. It is an international affairs incident. When a foreign dictatorship starts making threats to Canadian media here in our own country, our Prime Minister has a moral and political and sovereign duty to defend our media. And I say this as a competitor to CTV. But I put CTV's freedom of speech ahead of any corporate rivalry. Now, I invited Matthew Garrow, CTV's spokesman, on the show today to explain his company's point of view. I sent him some questions in writing. Somewhere just gathering facts, like who exactly called CTV? Was it from the embassy or the law firm? What did they say? Does CTV want the government's help to rescue them? But some of my other questions were a little tougher. For example, I asked, who made the censorship decision at CTV? Was it someone at CTV, or was it their parent company, Bell Canada? Now, why would that be an important question? Well, look, Bell Canada happens to have enormous business ties to Saudi Arabia over the years. I mean, for example, in the 1980s, Bell Canada built the Saudi telephone infrastructure, a $1 billion deal. Here are some pictures of Bell Canada's compounds in Saudi Arabia where their Canadian workers stayed when they were working over there. Here's a closer shot of the Taif compound, and here's some pictures from Bell Canada's Dammam compound. That's a picture from the sky, of course. Here's a swimming pool. Here's their rec room. Here's the Dammam Girl Scouts. Check that out. Now look at all of these things. It looks like pretty normal living, right? But that's the point. All of these Canadian workers over there had to stay on compounds, like being in a walled-off jail, walled off from Saudi society. They had everything on those compounds: homes, schools, pools, Girl Scout clubs. Because if they dared to leave that compound, they would be subject to Saudi laws, like no Girl Scouts who aren't wearing burqas, like no men and women swimming together, no freedom at all, really. That's the terrifying thing about Bell Canada and all other companies that send Westerners to work in Saudi Arabia. They soon realize they're living in a dictatorship where everyone is a de facto slave, and women are subject to gender apartheid. That's why they live in those compounds. They're really prisons. In fact, Bell Canada was accused of religious discrimination at its project over there because, of course, the Saudis don't like Jews or other minorities much. My point is this: Bell Canada, which loves doing business with the Saudi princes, just happens to own CTV. And CTV nixed the ad after receiving a threat from Saudi Arabia without putting up a fight. I asked Matthew Garrow who made the decision, CTV or Bell Canada. I asked him if Bell Canada's work in Saudi Arabia was a factor. Now, he wrote back, but he refused to answer those questions. I wrote back to him again, and again, he ignored me. Well, maybe he's not ignoring me. Maybe he's being censored, too. But the good news is, even if CTV is obeying the Saudis, other Canadian journalists are finally realizing that this is an important story. I mean, when was the last time a foreign government went around threatening Canadian TV stations. I mean, imagine if the United States tried that. Imagine if China tried that. Imagine if Israel tried that. I mean, imagine the outrage. Of course, that would never happen in the case of America and Israel, but with Saudi Arabia, it's happening. Finally, after ignoring the story for 2 days, other media have joined us. Let me give you an example. I've got some newspapers today. Check this out. The front page of the National Post, huge story, and a gorgeous photo. The Globe and Mail, page A6, the full page is taken up with the story and Jason Kenney's brave denunciation of those Saudi thugs. Even the Toronto Star, they put it in their business section, ethical ad stirs Saudi ire, but it's in the Star nonetheless. And of course, the Sun, we've been holding this story for days, but there's a great cartoon in it. Take a look at the editorial cartoon by Andy Donato. I think we've got it on the screen right there. Exactly, check that out. CTV is letting Saudi women haters make their broadcasting decisions. Great cartoon by Andy Donato in the Sun newspapers today. Wonderful work. Well, you know, we still haven't seen the story on CTV News, which isn't surprising. And we haven't seen it on the CBC. Again, no big surprise. But at least the newspapers and the talk radio stations of this country are all over the story. That is great. But what about, oh, I don't know, Canada's feminists? I mean, yesterday we heard a great defense of women's equality and free speech from Rona Ambrose, the cabinet minister who personally emailed me right before our show. It was wonderful. Frankly, it was a little bit moving. But what about the self-appointed guardians of feminism in this country, always running around bitching about something? I mean, surely they would be appalled with Saudi censorship of Canadian media when the censorship banned an ad that highlighted the mistreatment of women in Saudi Arabia. This was a feminist ad. Where are the feminists? They should be talking. Well, that's what you might think. But you'd be wrong. Judy Rebick, who used to run the National Action Committee on the Status of Women, or NACSAO, is one of Canada's noisiest feminists, but most of the time she is. She's silent now, though, isn't she, about Saudi censorship? Not a peep. Another noisy feminist is Antonia Z, a columnist at the Toronto Star. She claims to care about women and women's rights. That's what she says. But for some reason, in this case, she ends up on the Saudi side of the fight. Here's what she wrote on Twitter yesterday. Look at this. She says, "That ad is disgusting and uses stolen and photoshopped photos." What? I mean, so she's against the ad, but let's just take a quick look at it again to see if she knows what the hell she's talking about. Run the ad.
Fact. Last year, we bought over 400 million barrels of oil from Saudi Arabia. We bankrolled a state that doesn't allow women to drive, doesn't allow them to leave their homes or work without their male guardian's permission.
You know what? The ad is not disgusting. What the ad talks about is the Saudi treatment of women. That's disgusting. The photos there aren't stolen. They are licensed stock images. There's no photoshopping. They're just pictures of women. I really don't even know what Zerbezius means, but she sure sounds mad at something or someone. It's just weird that a so-called feminist like her hates a pro-women, anti-Sharia ad. Isn't that funny? But look, who cares about Antonia Z? Even the Toronto Star, who she works for now, acknowledges this is a major story in today's paper. So the battle is finally joined. Yesterday we had a few cabinet ministers say the right thing, and hopefully we'll have some more today and in the days ahead. But the Saudi threats are continuing. The CTV censorship continues. We need the Prime Minister's intervention to demand that the Saudis call off their dogs and keep their bullying in their own country and out of ours. So will you please take a moment and write to Stephen Harper right now? He's at pm@pm.gc.ca. Tell him that Canadians are being bullied. I mean, either CTV is being bullied by the Saudis or Bell Canada. CTV's owners are being bullied by the Saudis, but someone's being bullied by the Saudis, and it's our freedom. I don't care much for CTV, but I care that it's allowed to be free. And right now, CTV is not free. This fight isn't over, and it won't be until the Saudis are stopped and forced to apologize.